Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again, barefaced lies. Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again.
It's like, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think of one where it's all gonna end, yeah. If you feel we never wanna defend, yeah. 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Hey Sean, you got a party? You got that little party going on there. Keep to the left, you can't think right, so everything you do goes wrong, yeah. Incompetence just leads to disaster. Corruption brings it on even faster. What you say?
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. If you feel we never wanna defend, yeah. 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. If you feel we never wanna defend, yeah. 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Comrades, you always told us you'd build us all a new Jerusalem, yeah. You talk the talk, but when you walk, you only leave a crooked line there. And you don't see the trouble.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
Very good evening, Tuesday the 10th of March 2026. My name is Raja Miah. This is a Recusant 9 transmission. We finished last night very much focused on Baroness Said Varsi, and I wanted to bring up for you a couple of historical stories involving what was a very promising progressive conservative at one point, patriotic. And she's clearly gone on a journey where she's now finds herself to be somewhere else. So I thought it was only fair that I brought up two stories involving her. And again, not my words, you'll see it yourself and you can make your own minds up. So let me start straight away as I mean to go on. So let me bring this up first of all. He says, I have a camera source there, what's going on? Ah, there you go. It was just a wire. Nothing more than that. This article is more than 13 years old, claims The Guardian. Lady Varsi. Some Pakistani men think white girls are fair game. So that's where she spoke out about this 13 years ago. So in 2012, so this is around the time of the, the Rochdale sort of convictions. Baroness Varsi came out with this. Some Pakistani men think white girls are fair game. This by today's standard, would be deemed to be anti-Muslim hatred, I would imagine. The Conservative Party co-chairman has hit out at the small minority of Pakistani men who see white girls as fair game. Not sure where she got small minority from and in what context, but small minority of Pakistani men who see white girls as fair game. So that means something makes them fair game. There's an underlying cultural perception, religious doctrine, there's something underlying that results in these men considering these girls fair game. And again, you can see the focus on the race by Baroness Varsi herself. Pakistani men, white girls in the same sentence. In comments that followed the Rochdale grooming case, Lady Varsi said she believed race was a factor in the crime. So there you go, an acknowledgement, an admittance that race was a factor, racially motivated. If race is a factor, that means they're racially motivated. And she urged Muslim leaders to address the issue and ensure that men who regard white women as third-class citizens were isolated by their communities. Not second-class, but third-class citizens. 9 Muslim men, mainly of Pakistani origin, were found guilty last week of plying girls as young as 13 with drink and drugs so they could use them for sex. Actually, this is The Guardian, and this is 15 years ago, so they could rape them, is what it should have said. Even as far back as then, so they could gang rape them, is what it should have said. After the trial, Greater Manchester Police sought to play down suggestions of any racial element to the case. So proof there 13 years ago that Greater Manchester Police, or more than 13 years ago, there's what, 15 years ago nearly, Greater Manchester Police were trying to hide the racially motivated factors. After the trial, Greater Manchester Police sought to play down suggestions of any racial element to the case, as did Keith Vaz. Now, Keith Vaz was at the time the Labour chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee. This is the same Keith Vaz. What did he do? Did it involve drugs and a rent boy? I can't keep up, but he has since had to resign in disgrace, hasn't he? So you can see Keith Vaz was the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee. But Varsi, who is Muslim, told the London Evening Standard newspaper there is a small minority of Pakistani men who believe that white girls are fair game. I'm quoting you word for word, Baroness, and we have to be prepared to say that. You can only start solving a problem if you acknowledge it first. The small minority who see women as second-class citizens and white women probably as third-class citizens are to be spoken out against. So if there is a small minority who see women as second-class citizens, that is Varsi admitting the prejudices within the Pakistani communities towards women, which is why she says women as second-class and white women as third-class. Britain's most senior Muslim politician said she decided to speak out after her father, who moved to the UK from Punjab, told her she should be out there condemning the crime as loudly as he could. Quote, "In mosque after mosque, this should be raised as an issue so that anybody remotely involved should start to feel that the community is turning on them." What does that demonstrate? One, the power of the mosque, the importance of the mosque, and the fact that the mosque weren't doing this, condemning this. Varsi said communities have a responsibility to stand up and say, this is wrong, this will not be tolerated. She uses the word communities. Fast forward 13 years, 14 years, and if we were to try and group these crimes and come up with a community relevance, a racial relevance, a religious relevance, we would be racists and Islamophobes and would fall foul of the newly introduced or being introduced legislation. Yet here is Varsi very clearly using the word communities have a responsibility. She urged the authorities to have the confidence to tackle allegations involving minorities. Cultural sensitivity should never be a bar to applying the law, Varsi added. There you go. When we exposed the cover-up the way we did, and this is 2012, the trail went cold, 3 girls came along and went, Maggie Oliver got lots of, sympathy for the girls and stuff, but there was no solution in sight. And when we politicized it and we exposed it in the way we did, which clearly demonstrated the racial motivation, the religious justification, which Varsi is, if not outright confirming, at least alluding to as far back as the 18th of May 2012. If she was doing this as far back as then, and when we forced it into the public sphere the way we did in January 2025, do you know what she did? This was one of the first interviews she gave. She appeared on this podcast, and I just want to play it so you see it.
We can agree to disagree on that one.
Often, and we are, we do disagree on that. What have we become? Hitler has won. If this is the kind of society that we have become.
Welcome to The Tea with me, Myriam Francois, where we uncover the story behind the stories. Today, we're discussing Islamophobia and the state of anti-Muslim racism. In early 2024, the Islamophobia Response Unit reported a 236% rise in Islamophobia cases compared to before October 2023. The anti-racist organisation, the Runnymede Trust, says the racist riots of summer 2024 here in the UK, which saw direct attacks on Muslims and mosques, were the clear outcome of intensifying Islamophobia. They link this explosion of violence to the ways that UK Muslim communities have been portrayed in relation to Gaza. Meanwhile, more than half of British Conservative Party members believe Islam is a threat to the British way of life. And with the election of Trump, who's just revived the Muslim ban and appointed Elon Musk in his cabinet, a man who has publicly backed violent Islamophobes, I can assure you that this is one of the most urgent issues of our time. So, as we say in French, à qui profite le crime? Who benefits from all this scapegoating? Joining me to unpack the Islamophobia industry, its network of pundits and funders, and who it truly serves, is none other than Baroness Saida Varsi, the first Muslim to serve as a cabinet minister in the UK and author of a new book, Muslims Don't Matter. Saida, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, I have to ask, how are you? Your book opens with, I'm done.
I'm done with explaining. I'm done with caveating. I'm done with condemning. I'm done with constantly having to justify my place in my country. I'm done with being held accountable to a standard higher than anybody else is held to. I'm done. And I think it was in the middle of what was the appalling violence happening in Gaza that I realized that we were in a place where even if you were not Muslim, as many of the Palestinians were not, if you were perceived to be Muslim, that was enough for you and your lives not to matter.
Okay, so that's the introduction. This went out at the end of January. You can see the host pro-Gaza, pro-Palestine T-shirt. But the section I want you to play is, and it's not long, it's just this bit, so you get it. So this is her viewpoint on the grooming gangs.
Of the story in the first place, because of course in many ways this is kind of an old story. I mean, I went through the first round of it being circulated and remember how hard we had to, you know, present facts that, you know, the grooming gangs are basically gangs of criminals. They are not, you know, faith worshipping, mosque going. I mean, I remember reading one report where one of the guys involved referred to himself as like Snoop Dogg. I was like, he probably takes more inspiration, with all due respect to Snoop Dogg, obviously, who is not responsible for grooming gangs. But my point is, no one is assuming that Snoop Dogg is responsible for grooming gangs. But because our man's called Hassan, suddenly the entire Muslim community and Islam is responsible for the behavior of these guys who are, you know, clear criminal gangs. I mean, what do you make of the resurgence of this story and the way it's being talked about?
You know, 3 men in this country, 3 grandfathers were killed on the streets of this country in 3 different incidents. And each one of them was a Muslim man, a Muslim grandfather, and he was targeted and killed because he was perceived to be a groomer. And this trope, this stereotype about Muslim communities has led to people being murdered. And again, I talk about this in the book, that if you're genuinely interested in victims, then the victims of sexual abuse and sexual violence in this country are predominantly in the home, and you're most likely to be abused or sexually violated by a member of your family or a close circle. That's fact.
Right.
I was a criminal defense lawyer for many years. I prosecuted for many years. I was involved in these types of cases. And I've represented everybody from senior police officers to members of the Church of England to senior business people in this space. Sexual men, and it is most often men, who engage in sexual violence and sexual abuse come from all walks of life and all backgrounds. And Home Office reports show that they are, in this country, overwhelmingly white men. That's fact. Now, when this report was commissioned by the Home Office, and that's what it came back with evidentially, 3 successive Home Secretaries, Conservative Home Secretaries, actually all of them from the ethnic minority community, suppressed that report because that report did not serve the political ends in which it was commissioned.
Say it out loud. It didn't serve what ends then specifically?
It didn't serve the end of proving that actually sexually abusive behaviour was predominantly being committed by Muslim men. It didn't suit that purpose. And in the end, the Information Commissioner had to be petitioned and had to force the publication of that report. And that's deeply disturbing. And the person, you know, amongst others, who suppressed that was somebody by the name of Sajid Javid, who he himself was from a Muslim heritage. He says it's not a part of his life and it's not a practice, but he was of that heritage. So this is a political agenda, has been going for many, many years. I first spoke about this, Miriam, in 2012.
I remember.
And I spoke about this because when these cases first started coming to light, my father actually called me around. He's now 85. And he said to me, I am appalled and disgusted that men who may come from the background that I come from and profess to follow the faith that I follow could have committed these most heinous of acts. He actually held those men to a higher standard than he would have held white men.
Yeah.
Because he felt that they should have been better. That actually they should not have been the same as any other white man who may go out and commit these crimes. That actually the way in which they had been taught and they had been brought up would meant that they would have been the men who protect victims, not be perpetrators. Right. And he said to me, I want you to take this up. Because these are the very men who within our communities think women are second-class citizens.
Right.
He said these are the very men. I remember I'm one of 5 girls. My dad's an amazing feminist. And he said, these are the very men who took issue with your mom learning to drive in the 70s, the very men who took issue with you guys going to university, the very men who took issue with you being in politics. These are the very men that I have spent my whole life explaining to them what it means to be Muslim and what it means to be a Pakistani man. And he said, and so you take these men on. And I said, yeah, but you know, Dad, there are lots of... And he went, I'm not interested in the white men, Saida. I'm interested in you taking these men and explaining very clearly that these are the men that see Muslim women, the women in their own homes, as second-class citizens, and they clearly thought these white girls were third class. And I did the interview, and I got a bit of flack for it at the time. But then, Miriam, we pursued that with conferences, reports. The MCB actually led a conference on tackling this issue. There were khutbas
Muslim Council of Britain.
the Muslim Council of Britain. There were khutbas in mosques up and down the country during Friday prayers, talking about this, challenging it. And the front line in fighting this was Muslims. People like Nazir Afzal, a prosecutor, people like me in politics, other people, within the community. So I think it's galling for me when people start saying, why isn't the Muslim community doing enough? The Muslim community was when this first came to light, they were at the forefront of this and will continue to be so. And I will fight till my last breath against these appalling men that actually abuse girls.
Yeah. And
what I take issue with, and this is what I take issue with, when you are not really interested in victims, which Musk and Robinson and the rest of them are not, because they fail to call out men who sit alongside them and are prepared to engage in sexually predatory behavior, including actually some of their own behavior could be seen as such.
Absolutely.
Actually, these men are not interested in victims. They are interested in using these victims' experiences as a convenient political tool to pursue divisive means and create division and hatred within our nations.
Right.
And when mainstream politicians jump on that bandwagon, including my colleagues, people like Robert Jenrick and others, who have been in power and in office, in some of the most senior offices, and have chosen not to do anything about this, and now wish to campaign on it within months of being out of power and out of position, then it needs to be called out for what it is. And that is that this is political opportunism using anti-Muslim racism to pursue ends to divide our nation. And these people are arsonists. They are setting our country alight. And those of us who are patriots need to fight back. And we need to say that, yes, you are pursuing Muslims. And yes, of course, as a Muslim, that matters to me. But you are destroying my country.
Right.
And I will not allow you to do it.
On that note.
So, she takes it up in 2012, allegedly, and she claims there was a conference or something by the Muslim Council of Britain on it. I can't find a conference, or if it wasn't high profile in any way, but apparently, and there were khutbahs, sermons, is what a khutbah is, sermons in mosques across the country. And she's claiming that on the front line fighting this was the Muslims. This is just pure revisionism. Pure revisionism. In January last year, when we finally forced it over the line. Now, if you cared about this, and it was Muslims on the front line fighting this, say, a Muslim such as myself, Saida, who articulated this in a way that made sense, instead of just focusing on the Muslim element or the Pakistani element, evidenced, articulated, educated people on the actual political cover-up and what was taking place. Why did you not support it? And I'll argue this. When she spoke out about it in 2012, as a consequence of some of the first cases coming over the line, I do not believe even someone like Saida Varsi, who is embedded in that community, her family are embedded in that community, I don't think she realised the industrial scale nature of what was taking place. And now she's no longer flavour of the month in the Conservative Party. Her career stalled, And then her Muslim identity became something that she expressed herself through more and more, rather than the other way around. And she's now in a place where she's with this Miriam, I think she's a convert, one of those Muslim converts. No time for her. No time for these people. I have. And when asked, and we're campaigning for a national inquiry at this point, fighting the Labour Party administration, why not lend yourself, lend your powerful voice to supporting a national inquiry? If Muslims have been fighting this from the front line from the outset, as you claim, Baroness Varsi, why are you not supporting a national inquiry? Because surely one element of a national inquiry would be to investigate these communities and highlight and demonstrate the sermons in the mosques, the fearless work of the Muslim Council of Britain. It's absolute nonsense. And when this theme is introduced in this interview, and throughout all of this section, I played you the entire section, linked to this, I've not hidden anything. I'm not the BBC, I don't edit things out. Her focus, at no point whatsoever, is on the children who were gang raped. She has got nothing to say about the children who were systematically gang raped on an industrial scale and trafficked across the country. She has nothing to say on the men who legitimised their actions through racism. Remember, she acknowledged it in 2012. She's got nothing to say anymore on that now. And yet, what she does is she deflects. 3 grandfathers were killed because they were perceived to be groomers. I can't find the story of that. I'm not disputing her claims. She's a government minister. She'll have access to information I don't. But you know it's going wrong for her, because immediately after saying that, she starts to deflect. She first of all deflects on most of child abuse is done in the home. Saida, we know most child abuse is done in the home, and we all oppose it. We want those who are involved in it to be put in prison, and we want the children to be safeguarded. So she deflects. Oh, why aren't we talking about this where the majority takes place, rather than this nuanced, minority? And then she makes reference to the Home Office report, which shows that the overwhelming number of men who committed these sorts of crimes were white men. Now, in a majority white country, where the Muslim population is only something like 7% and the Pakistani community even less, what she ignores or doesn't seem to understand, and of course she understands. She's a bright woman, of course she understands that these men are vastly overrepresented. And the Home Office report attempted to hide that in the way it presented the statistics. And yes, it was forced into the public. And what she forgets is the people who forced it into the public was the ordinary people who signed a petition, got it over 100,000, pursued it before the Information Commissioner got involved. We forced that report out into the open. And when we forced that report out into the open, the first thing we did, and this is a matter of public record because all of my work is online, is we tore it to shreds as a cover-up of what was really taking place. It took another 4 years, before Louise Casey pretty much echoed our views and opinions and said that Home Office report wasn't worth the paper it's written on. and it jumped to conclusions it should never have. But what I've never heard before I came across this interview during my research was she's claiming that the report was suppressed because it did not prove the Pakistani rape gangs. I've not heard that anywhere else before. My take on it was that the report that they published in the end was retrospectively tinkered with to actually hide the existence of the Pakistani rape gangs that we now know are true. And just look at this swarmy face. Just look at her. Just look at this nonsense. And she concludes by saying because some people are making political capital out of it, it shouldn't have the focus it has had. Now, I'm disappointed that some people are making political capital out of this. But that's a byproduct of being in the field of politics. It's inevitable. If you're a politician, you will make political capital out of social situations, events. I don't care that Jenrick is making political capital out of it. I care that finally he's speaking out about it. Same with the Conservatives, what I said to you yesterday. So, Saeed Varsi has gone on this journey from 2012 to 2026, where it started off where she was speaking out and acknowledging the race and the religion and the need for these communities to take ownership. Those aren't my words, these are her words. And yeah, I'm paraphrasing, but these are her words. And now, raising these issues, speaking of them in the way we speak of them, as in there is a issue within the community itself, and I'm clear on that. I've shared my views and opinions and I've evidenced it. You can disagree with me, but I've not been ranting. I'm not saying deport, remigrate, any of this nonsense. I'm evidencing things in a way that these people find deeply uncomfortable, which is the history of Pakistan, the rape, genocide, the way in which the Islamic clerics of Pakistan legitimized the rape camps in Bangladesh, and how that culture from that country was brought from there to here, and what do you think they did with the white girls here? Saeeda Varsi knows all of this, and she now is done. Disgraceful. Disgraceful behaviour from a woman who knows better. Okay, for those of you who are joining me this evening, my name is Raja Miah. I am 7 years into this, and before that, well over 20 years of a career in safeguarding children and protecting communities from extremism and extremists. I sat in rooms with world leaders, prime ministers, secretaries of state. I've advised on a whole host of stuff, and I am now finding myself in a place where I will never ever work again in the field I come from, because I refuse to look the other way to the gang rape of children in my hometown. The work I do is completely dependent on your support, your goodwill. My work is 100% free. My subscription numbers are pitiful. If you just look at this girl, I mean, it's amazing subscription numbers. She's got what? 166,000 subscribers as Dr. Miriam whatever got. So, you know, you can see. I think, yeah, nowhere near. Nowhere near. So, please, at the very least, click on subscribe on this YouTube channel. It costs you nothing. If you can, buy me a coffee. Subscribe to Redwall and the Rabble. Again, completely free. You take up a paid subscription if you want. You don't have to, although I will say we have lost about a third of our subscribers so far this year. So it's not looking good for me. Thank you for the super chats, Julia. Thank you, Darcy. And thank you, Natanya, for your kind contribution. Thank you so much. This is the link. There's a barcode in the top corner. Please, if you find value, sign up and subscribe. I'm sorry to hear of your bereavement, Jenny. My condolences. Yeah, I'm not holding out much on that, I'm afraid. Just having a look at some of your questions before we move on. Okay, so she's done a lot of work for Al Jazeera. That makes a lot of sense. Imagine how I feel. I've got to listen, listen and listen again. I'm afraid that argument is we've lost that argument. I don't even think it's worth having that conversation anymore, because it's what they want us to say. There's no such word, so they can, you know, put us in the corner as bigots and stuff. I think sometimes we've got to engage in a way that they don't want us to, or to expect us to. And it's the same with that, you know. I'll explain what's going on. Yeah. And it's only meaningless to us, Natanya. To these people, it's become a battleground, hasn't it? And phrases like this just makes it easier for them, I'm afraid. Is that what happened? I remember drugs, poppers. Let's get this party started. 2 rent boys. I'm sorry, Mary, you're not going to get a response. I think I shared yesterday, you know, sometimes you've just got to own it. What is taking place is very clear, I think, to all of you. If I seem tired, it's not the 3 nights or the 4 nights a week that's tiring me. It's the managing some of the cancelled subscriptions and trying to make sense of where we go next with this, because I don't know. And that's what I find problematic. And alongside that, I have a number of serious court battles taking place, which are equally draining. One is with Greater Manchester Police, and one is with a senior government MP, former government minister. So that is where a lot of my effort is currently invested, separate to all of the work I am doing. And yes, I was on with Nick Buckley this morning. So Nick and I have known each other for a long time. So he interviews me, gives me a platform really once a month or so. I know he stood in the Denton and Gorton by-election. I know he didn't do at all well, but he came back, and asked me if I'd share some of my thoughts on some of these issues, and I did. So there is a podcast, there's 2 podcasts. I think I linked one on X earlier, and there'll be another one out, I think, by the weekend. So that was what I did. Yeah, I'm afraid it just doesn't work like that. I wish it did. It just doesn't work like that. All of my funding comes from ordinary people, the majority of whom contribute something like £3 a month. So that's where all of it comes from. Okay, I want to move on to the focus of my title today. Let me play something first, give it some context, a newspaper article, and I'll give you my perspective of what's really going on.
With permission, I'll make a statement on the government's action plan for social cohesion entitled Protecting What Matters. Britain has faced global crises at many moments in our history, and we got through them by staying strong and united. Today, we navigate new threats to our communities and families, and we must stand together once again against those who seek to divide and weaken us. They want to sow division in our streets, our neighbourhoods, our homes, and in our minds. They feed off deliberate misinformation, hatred, and extremism, carried across social media by algorithms and funded by hostile states and rogue billionaires determined to pull our communities apart. Online echo chambers, hatred for those with a different point of view, an unwillingness to seek compromise have led to a politics more aggressive, polarised and toxic than we've seen before, certainly in our lifetimes. As a nation, we are proof that people from different backgrounds can live, work and contribute together. A multi-ethnic democracy where neighbours look out for each other. But the foundations on which this country was built have been rocked by the rapid change all around us. Economic shocks and austerity halted the once steady improvement in our living standards. Rapid technological change has transformed how we work and live our lives. Intergenerational unfairness, regional inequality, an ageing population, the Tory open borders experiment and the disruption caused by their asylum seeker hotels policy. All of this has left communities more fearful of the future and more susceptible to siren voices wrongly putting the blame on minority groups. Today, through the publication of Protecting What Matters, which we've laid as a command paper in both houses this afternoon, we set out our steps towards a more confident, cohesive and united kingdom. Patriotism means bringing our country together, never pulling it apart. It's not patriotic to target someone because of their religion or the colour of their skin. We will resist those who peddle that kind of hatred and division. We choose to celebrate our country and all it stands for. We choose to come together in the best of times and the worst of times. We choose to take on those who seek to divide us. That is patriotism. Our action plan aims to build confident communities that have hope in the future. There is a direct link between declining high streets and a sense that the country is going backwards. People remember high streets from years gone by that were vibrant, buzzy, great places to socialise with friends and family. There's a real sense of anger as well as of loss that so many have been left boarded up and run down, covered in graffiti, full of dumped rubbish, bleak symbols of the wasted Tory years. People deserve to feel proud of their neighbourhood and pride in place is central to our plan to make that happen. We have now committed £5.8 billion to almost 300 constituencies and begun to set up neighbourhood boards so local people can decide for themselves how that money is spent. Fair funding for councils means funding now follows deprivation for the first time in over a decade. We're offering grassroots organisations £5 million through the Common Ground Fund to tackle division in communities. We'll focus too on protecting young people from those who want to warp their minds with hatred and introduce more effective regulation of home education. The first ever register of children not in school, stronger oversight where children may be at risk, and piloting a new approach where new safety checks are carried out before a child can be taken out of mainstream schooling. It's important children grow up understanding the diversity of our nation, so we're investing £500,000 to link schools serving different communities to make sure they know and understand each other better. We will establish a social cohesion measurement framework so we can identify risks early and act quickly. We'll set expectation on integration for new arrivals and the communities that will receive them, with a focus on learning English so people have a shared language, can participate in the local community and have respect for British values, our democracy and our way of life. We will end the Tory asylum hotels policy and shape an immigration system that is fair and transparent and works better for all communities. We will not allow hatred to distort the lives and life chances of those who are targeted. Right now, Muslim communities are facing shocking levels of abuse. Anti-Muslim hate crimes are at record levels, and they now make up almost half of all religious hate crimes, way out of proportion to the size of our Muslim population. Mosques, schools and businesses have been attacked, women harassed, families are living in fear. We have a duty to act, but you can't tackle a problem if you can't describe it. So today we are adopting a non-statutory definition of anti-Muslim hostility. This gives a clear explanation of unacceptable prejudice, discrimination and hatred targeting Muslims so we can take action to stop it. The definition safeguards our fundamental right to freedom of speech about religion in general or any religion in particular, and ensures that concerns raised in the public interest are protected. I want to thank the members of the independent working group chaired by Dominic Grieve, who have provided advice to the government on this matter. They have themselves been targets for abuse because they carried out this work, and that is utterly unacceptable. I am grateful for their patience and their wisdom. We will now work with groups across society to consider how this definition can be used most effectively and what comes next in disseminating it. And we've deposited a copy of the definition in the libraries of both houses. We also remain absolutely committed to stamping out anti-Semitism. We have witnessed murderous anti-Semitic terrorist attacks, both here in the UK and abroad. Sickeningly, this led to spikes in anti-Semitic abuse. Since coming to power, this government has taken decisive steps to combat anti-Semitism, with record funding for security at synagogues and schools, millions of pounds to tackle anti-Semitism in schools and universities, new laws to stop abusive protests outside places of worship. Today, we are going even further to tackle anti-Semitism in schools and colleges and in the healthcare system, and crucially, clamping down hard on the extremism which so often targets Jews first of all. Work is underway across government as we continue to root out anti-Semitic hatred from every part of British life. We also hear concerns about hatred and discrimination in the workplace. We're building on protections in our landmark Employment Rights Act, rolling out training across the civil service and working with major employers like the NHS. This will include training to prevent and respond to religious hatred across the entire workforce. Confronting extremism in all its forms requires more resilient communities. We will implement the anti-extremism policies the previous government announced but never brought into force, embedding the 2024 extremism definition, producing an annual State of Extremism report, and improving our ability to monitor and stop extremist influence online and offline. We will introduce a state threats designation power to disrupt hostile state and proxy organisations. We'll strengthen the Charity Commission's powers to tackle extremist abuse and ban visas for extremists and hate preachers. Our universities should always be beacons of free speech, where students feel safe to learn, to disagree, and to explore how they see the world. But in recent years, this has been undermined, and we will not tolerate that. We're introducing new measures to tackle the rise of extremism on our college and university campuses, particularly since the October the 7th attacks, strengthening monitoring of extremism on campuses, improving oversight of compliance with the prevent duty, and taking more robust enforcement action where that's needed. We will also protect people from hate content online. The government will not stand by as rogue platforms push divisive and aggressive hatred on social media. We are looking at how we can make platforms give their users more control over the algorithms that determine what they see, and we will make full use of powers in the Online Safety Act. Madam Deputy Speaker, we have all grown up in a United Kingdom which by global standards is remarkably cohesive. That cohesion underpins our economic strength, our democratic freedom and our national security. It is a fundamental part of the Britain we love. We have made our choice. In place of division, we choose unity. And we know the people of Britain have made the same choice. The division and hate spewed by a small minority will never reflect our country. The real Britain is where parents put on after-school clubs and summer fetes to bring their kids together, where towns come out in the pouring rain to support their local football club with the same passion as they'd support their country's team in the World Cup, where neighbours hold street parties and where they set up mutual aid groups to look out for each other during COVID. This is a Britain to be proud of. Madam Deputy Speaker, I commend this plan to the House.
Shadow Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Secretary?
Wow. Wow. It's a lot there, lot to unpack there. But protecting what matters is their strategy. So protecting what matters, I think, is very clear to anyone who listened to what Steve Reid had to say objectively. Protecting what matters is protecting the machinery of the state and their power and their control over us. So much so that if you take your child out of school, they will take action to try and make that more difficult than before. So they teach from cradle to the grave. They want to protect what matters, which is protect themselves, and they want to limit our ability to question, to object, to mobilise against them and stand against what is clearly tyranny. That speech I just played, and you'd have to cut out some of the woolly soft stuff about summer fates and whatnot, but that speech will go down in history as a watermark, as a key event in where this government is trying to take us to. And the new definition, a non-statutory definition, that means it doesn't matter. You know, it's non-statutory means it's some sort of voluntary thing, which then why define it that way? On anti-Muslim hostility. So this is the Islamophobia stuff that they were going on about, and the terminology they've ended up with is anti-Muslim hostility. Let me read you something. The new definition was unveiled by the UK government on Monday, sparking reaction from politicians and religious advisory groups. Unveiled by Community Secretary Steve Reid, the definition will serve as a tool to help governments to better understand, measure, prevent and address anti-Muslim hatred. Reid said the government has a duty to act against the record levels of hate crime, adding that you can't tackle a problem if you can't describe it. It was announced as part of a wider strategy on social cohesion, but has been in the pipeline since a working group led by Tory Minister Dominic Grieve was set up in February last year, and that was done under Angela Rayner, remember? The move comes as hate crime against Muslims jumped by almost a fifth in the year ending March 2025 to 3,199 offences. But the definition has not been announced without its challenges. For many decades since Islamophobia became a part of Britain's national conversation, arguments have been mounted over whether a definition would endanger freedom of speech. Initially, ministers had looked to create a definition for Islamophobia, but by October it was understood that the working group would define anti-Muslim hostility instead. This alone prompted backlash from critics who claimed the government was showing cowardice in their rejection to confront Islamophobia's sentiments. Freedom of speech concerns were raised that defining Islamophobia would prevent all legitimate criticism of the Islamic faith. Mr. Reid said, "Today we are adopting a non-statutory definition of anti-Muslim hostility. This gives a clear explanation of unacceptable prejudice, discrimination and hatred targeting Muslims, so we can take action to stop it. The definition safeguards our fundamental rights to freedom of speech," no it doesn't, "about religion in general or any religion in particular, and ensures that concerns raised in the public interest are protected." The definition said Islamophobia was rooted in racism and was a type of racism that targets expression of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. So that's what came before. This is what's come since. There's going to be a judicial review. It's not going to be accepted lightly or easily. And I don't think it will in any way protect or safeguard Muslims at all. Let me see if I can find something else for you to hear. You like this? It took me a while because Iqbal Mohammed MP has me blocked. I wonder why Iqbal Mohammed MP has had me blocked.
We all agree that there is no place in our society for hatred or discrimination of anybody, anywhere. Islamophobic incidents in the UK are at record levels. Thousands of incidents each year, with many more likely unreported. Abuse is increasingly normalised, politicised through media, TV and online driven, institutional as well as street level. And police data shows serious undercounting, making specialist monitoring essential. Islamophobia in the UK is not limited to fringe behaviour. The data shows a pattern of escalating hostility and normalisation in public discourse, including this place and the other place. So how will this definition be integrated into the Nolan principles, and what sanctions will apply to members of this House and members of the other place?
Secretary of State.
Well, it's for the House authorities to determine what happens with members of this House, but he's right to point to the huge concerns we should all share about the unacceptable level of hostility and abuse directed at Muslims, in all likelihood underreported, because we know that not all instances of crime of that kind are.
So what he's trying to do already is censor the debate in Parliament and censor the debate in the House of Lords. That's what Pakistani Iqbal Mohammed is trying to do. Block me as much as you want, mate. You and your kind, Pakistani sectarians, Islamists. That's what I consider you to be. If reform are right-wing racist, then you are something else completely beyond that. Elected on a sectarian vote and a pro-Gaza clan-based bravery system of division and hatred towards the other. That's what these people are. And the first thing he gets up and says is, how are we going to censor MPs? Because he wants the likes of Katie Lamb, Nick Timothy, he wants those guys who speak articulately on this issue. He wants those censored and silenced, and here is what Nick Timothy had to say. Unlike our Mohammed lad, Nick Timothy follows me on X.
Difficult to imagine the sorts of circumstances. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's not difficult to imagine the sorts of circumstances where our freedom of speech and actions will be limited by this. So some schools, for example, some primary schools say that children cannot wear the hijab as part of the uniform policy. There's a secondary school called Michaela in London, which was in court a couple of years ago because they have a policy banning ritual prayer on school premises. That would be challenged under this definition. The debates we've had about the racial and religious aspects of the motivations of the members of the rape gangs would obviously be shut down. There's any number of examples you can think of, and of course we're likely to see sensitive organisations like the police, the Crown Prosecution Service, even the judiciary adopting this definition.
Do you think Donald Trump has a plan post-war?
I don't know if Donald Trump has a plan post-war. I don't know if our country has a plan of how we're going to respond to this. So, the title of today was something else entirely, and we're just getting to that now. So, I won't continue this evening, and I will pick up on that next time. I will do, and it's worth the analysis I want to provide. I think you will find value in that. I'm back tomorrow evening. It's meant to be an Oldham sort of specific transmission, but I'll try and squeeze this in maybe at the beginning if I can tomorrow, and I'll do that. But what this government has done, you say, some people use the word appeasement. It's not appeasement. It's far worse than that. It's surrendered to the sectarians and the Islamists and those who have an end game in mind, and that end game isn't the take over the country in the way some of the ethno-nationalists present. It's slightly different, and if you followed me, you'll know what I'm making reference to, and I'll go through that in detail tomorrow with all of you. What I would ask you for in an evening where I've not really stopped to ask for support, there's no sign-ups on the webpage, there's no sign-ups on the newsletters, there's none of that. And without that, and these numbers, as low as they are, it just isn't working. And I don't know what I can say or do to change that, because I've been trying for so many years now. And the short clickbait sort of format, it's not my style. So if my use is coming to an end, then I will go and do something else in a different way where I can be useful. So if you are one of the just under 1,000 who've joined me today, or the 20,000 who've read my newsletter this month, please at the very least subscribe to the YouTube channel. It costs you absolutely nothing. And if you can, join me on Redwall and the Rabble. And it does make a massive, massive difference for us. As you can see, someone asked me the question earlier about GB News. I went through it yesterday. We know her. Thank you, Martin. And thank you, Stuart, for the additional super chats. And I'm not sure if I'll do them again. Thank you, Ian. Latanya, Darcy, and Julia, thank you very, very much for your support this evening. Thank you to everyone else who is continuing to support me and understands we've not got here overnight, and it will take us time to get to where we need to. And the ranting and shouting and screaming, the division around hope, they being on the side of hope and we being on the side of hate, is a game we should understand and navigate. The message of division and unity, lies and truth that they are doubling down on. We are the enemies. We are the ones who they want rid of, silenced. And we need to understand the methods that they are using so we can successfully navigate them. Good night.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.